Tonight, the wife of Nashville's district attorney has a Metro government job thanks in part to her husband.
But Glenn Funk insists the desire for his family to get more money from taxpayers has not affected his decisions. News Channel 5 Chief Investigative Reporter Phil Williams has been digging into how this happened.
Lori Funk was a stay-at-home mom and part-time substitute teacher, but we discovered that after her husband took office last fall, she ended up with one of the most sought-after political jobs in Metro government.
I'm a dad and I'm a proud husband of 25 years.
For Glenn Funk's campaign, his family was part of the pitch. But when voters elected him Nashville's new DA, no one knew that not only would Funk get a job, so would his wife, at taxpayer expense.
She had expressed interest in going to work full-time and potentially even in the courthouse. And so when there was an opening, I facilitated them having a conversation, and Judge Holt ultimately hired her.
All rise.
General Sessions Judge Aaron Holt hired the DA's wife, Lori, for the $50,000 a year job as a court officer. That came after her husband hired Holt's court officer, Terry Feynman, to work on his domestic violence team, creating the opening in the judge's courtroom.
I knew Terry Feynman. I'd seen his work in court, and I recruited him to come into our office.
Feynman's resume shows that prior to going to work as a court officer 2 years ago, he had been a salesman for a local beer distributor. But the DA never gave anyone else a chance to apply for the domestic violence job.
It was my decision as district attorney who to hire in this office.
It was a political appointment that just happened to create an opening for your wife to get a job.
If Judge Holt had not hired my wife, Terry Feynman was already on the job here.
Mark, you ready? Thank you.
But Holt's story
Do solemnly swear. Do solemnly swear.
goes back to Funk swearing in late August. The judge was there, and he tells News Channel 5 he liked the new DA and his family so much, he suggested to Lori Funk that she could come to work for him if she ever needed a job. That was weeks before her husband ended up hiring Terry Feynman out of the judge's office.
Did you ask Judge Holt to hire her?
No.
Did you recommend her to Judge Holt?
I'm not sure how much conversation we had at that point after she had the conversation with Judge Holt, but I imagine there was some conversation, and I'd give my wife my highest recommendation.
While nepotism laws make it illegal for officials to hire their own relatives, there's nothing to keep them from hiring each other's relatives. In fact, it's sort of a long-time Nashville tradition.
It's treating Metro government like a favor machine. And that's the way it used to be. And that's the politics that we thought we had left behind.
Tea Party activist Ben Cunningham says it's a question of appearances, a notion shared privately by attorneys around the courthouse who questioned the DA's wife playing such a prominent role in the courtroom of a judge who's supposed to stand between the prosecution and the defense.
The fact that she is standing off to the side, helping with clerical functions, should not create any appearance.
Still, the new DA said he sought advice from the board that regulates the ethics of Tennessee lawyers. And while the attorney there said having the DA's wife working for a judge would not necessarily violate any ethical rules, he cautioned someone might nonetheless perceive a conflict.
Wouldn't it have been better to suggest to your wife, maybe you ought to get a job somewhere else?
I don't tell my wife where to get a job.
Do you think she would have got this job if you had not been the DA?
Whether I'm the DA or not, Judge Holt made an excellent choice in choosing her to work as his judicial assistant.
Now, our investigation also discovered that Glenn Funk hired a court officer from criminal court Judge Steve Dozier. Then the judge hired Funk's longtime driver and assistant, Keith Haddock, based on the DA's recommendation. Still, Vicki, both insist it was not part of any swap.
And people want these court officer jobs for a reason, right?
That's right. Almost $50,000 for one. And as we've reported in the past, because of the General Sessions judge's schedules, there are a lot of opportunities for short days and a lot of weeks off, more than most people get.
Sounds like a good job.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks, Phil. Well, if you know of something we should investigate, send us your tips. The email address, investigate@newschannel5.com, or you can call 615-244-NEWS.